Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Mitchell. Welcome back to the CI Chit Chat. Going to continue the conversation here on just what's going on with carbon intensity, trying to keep educating and spreading the word as much as we can. That's really what this all continues to boil down to is we got to keep creating awareness for CI. Lots of momentum picking up. I'll dig into that. Joined by a special guest here today. This is Jessica. She's from our sales team, helping to lead efforts over there, talking with a lot of farmers, talking with a lot of dealers, talking with a lot of different events. Jess has been all over the place all the time. And Jess, I'll let you introduce yourself here in just a bit. But as we always start, let me just tee things up for anybody that's new, just in regards to, okay, the basics, right? So carbon intensity, or CI for short, that is essentially the carbon footprint per bushel or per unit of outcome. It's the grams of GHG equivalents that go into producing our crops, or in this case, producing biofuel. The biofuel space is where there's the big opportunity because of the Section 45Z tax credit, part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And 45Z is due to go into place in 10 and a half months from now, January 1, 2025. So it's this crop that we're growing this year, and it takes data to make sure that we are in position to capitalize on this opportunity. So I just want to continue on the conversations. Put any questions that you've got in the chat, and we will keep answering your questions and digging in. All of these sessions are recorded. And a quick plug here as well that we have a webinar, a full 1 hour webinar later today at 1 o'clock Central. That's with Matt Rollick from Arva Intelligence. We did a 2023 carbon insetting program with Arva. They've got some really cool stuff going when it comes to sustainability markets and carbon insetting. They play in the carbon offset space as well. But going to be chatting with the Arva guys here later today at 1 o'clock. So be sure to get registered for that, or Diana, maybe get that put in the chat for us here as well. All right, let's get my guest in here today, my co-host today. Jessica is with our sales team. Like I said, Jess, maybe just give a little background on like your family's operation and stuff like that, some of your background, and then I'll tee up some more questions for you, but maybe a quick intro on yourself and some of your background.
Yeah, so I'm Jessica Kott. I'm a graduate of South Dakota State University in ag business. I've been with Continuum since September. I grew up on a majority commercial operation with a couple hundred ewes and a couple hundred cows in South Dakota. And so most of my experience has been in the agronomy side of things.
So yeah, and with since September, maybe share a little bit on you've been with the sales team the whole time, okay? And
Yeah.
we've continued to really expand that out, right? And keep hiring people like crazy since I don't know, you came on in September, probably in total at that point, probably at around, I don't know, 15, 18, just shy of 20. And now we're creeping up on 40 people here. But maybe share a little bit on even between September and now, what have you seen change in regards to like carbon intensity, the conversations with farmers, like just their like perspective?
Yeah, I think it's always kind of been a new thing, but I think with our outreach and also with other companies talking about it and becoming a bigger opportunity, the energy has definitely changed throughout us in September. But we've worked really hard to build out materials to inform our customers, to inform the marketplace as a whole. And we've hired on two full-time salespeople, and then we also have two sales interns who help us in our day-to-day operations.
Yeah. Yeah. Continuing to expand, especially on the sales side and on the operations side, right? On Carolyn's team, we had Carolyn on a chit chat here just a couple weeks ago that we got to make sure that we've got our internal people to facilitate CI certification. And that's really where things are shifting to is we've got to have our data documented. It's got to go through third-party verification, just like an organic verification. So think of it the same way. We got to document all of our farming practices, submit it to a third-party verifier at the end of the year. We have streamlined that entire process, making it really easy. But we've got to have our T's crossed and I's dotted on these numbers. So some quick updates on the overall world of CI. We're continuing to talk about the working group that occurred in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago. So they announced that there's supposed to be a new GREET model and some rules coming out about the 40B tax credit in March of this year, in just a couple weeks. It sounds like early March is what I'm hearing, but don't hold your breath on that. But in March, supposed to have a new GREET model, which is the U.S. Department of Energy tool that is the calculator for carbon intensity. So a new GREET model coming out in March, and then some rules. Okay, so from our side, we are working directly with Argonne National Lab. They're the Department of Energy lab that developed the GREET model. Now there's this new version of the GREET model coming out. What we've done at Continuum is we built out the front end, this simple to use interface for the farmer, and it directly integrates with the GREET model. So whenever there's new updates come out, like this one coming in March, and we know that there's going to continue to be updates, and we welcome that, right? We want to tell as good of a story as we can, have as accurate of data as possible. We've got to make sure that we are really dialed in when it comes to making these claims that we are making, especially with the money that we're talking. We got to really have the science dialed in. So we welcome those updated models, but that'll come out, here in March, and they are building out that GREET model for 40B because 40B is the sustainable aviation fuel tax credit for 2023 and 2024, and they already announced that they'll use the GREET model. Okay, so why do we care about sustainable aviation fuel and 40B? Well, this is kind of a precursor to 45Z, that in 2023, 40B is in play. It gives tax credits for sustainable aviation fuel produced in 2023 or in 2024. In 2025, 40B sunsets and sustainable aviation fuel goes and resides underneath 45Z, where it joins ethanol, biodiesel, renewable diesel, and then sustainable aviation fuel is tied in on that as well. So we're watching this very closely because that GREET model is what was already, said in the actual law in the Inflation Reduction Act. It said, hey, we're going to use the GREET model for 45Z. So we anticipate it's going to be this updated version, or maybe there'll be another update between now and 2025. We'll see what happens. But really good indicator here as to what the rules are going to be from 45Z, since they're so similar between 40B and 45Z. So between now and then, we want to make sure that farmers know what is their score. They need to know how to improve the score, and they need to be in position to document the practices. So Jess, your whole team has been helping farmers get into that like crazy. Maybe talk through that a little bit on what does that process look like? How should people, I guess, kind of get started, right? To see what their score is. Maybe walk through that process a little bit of basically step one.
Yeah, so step one is going into our platform, topsoil.ag, that has the GREET model built into it. It'll give you the federal GREET model numbers that you will need to take your grain to the ethanol plant. From there, you can fill out your farm profile and get your CI score, and then get started in the CI certification process, where one of our Regen Success agronomists will work with you to help you document all your practices, put them into topsoil so we can send it all very nicely to the third-party verifier, and then in return get it back to you or to your ethanol plant to help you get your premium.
Perfect. And how long have you been seeing it take? I always talk about like 10 to 15 minutes that it takes to like kind of get onto topsoil and get all the way through to fill out that farm profile. But uh as your team has gotten even better at it, they're probably getting quicker than that here. But any hot take on simplicity of being able to get in there and see what your score is?
Yeah, so getting into topsoil and filling out your farm profile takes about 10 minutes. Um, we recommend that you do the average of what you do across all your acres to kind of get your baseline farm score, since the verification process is field by field. The verification process, honestly, the earlier you get started, the better, especially before spring hits and planting starts. Getting those field maps in, maybe getting fall applied maps in will help you have less stress towards the middle of the season or end of the season.
Yeah, it just spreads out the workload. right? And it's so much easier to document our practices as we go versus wait till the end and attempt to look back and document everything. We anticipate that we'll have some pricing changes as well. Right now we're in preseason pricing. It's $5 an acre to get certified, because we're spreading out that workload, right? And able to get you in, get you going now where it's easier on the farmer, easier on the agronomist, easier on us. And we need to start documenting these practices now. We know that it is still early times. We don't have the final rules from the IRS, but in my mind, it's too big of an opportunity to not at least get your ducks in a row, get started, understand what's going on, especially between now and the busy season of planting. Now is a great time to be able to make sure that you at least know what's going on. You know how to hit play when you're ready to hit play. And the quicker we can do that, the easier it's going to be for
Mhm.
everyone. Jeff's got a great question in the chat. How and who is doing topsoil verification? So this is verification of the CI scores, right? We work with a group called Eco Engineers. They're one of the main verifiers or verifier and a consultant in the LCFS space. That's the low carbon fuel standard market space. So those are programs like California low carbon fuel market, stuff like that. Eco is they're not the only third party verifier, but they're a good one that we work with. And yeah, Jeff, I'm sure a lot of people know Eco, right? A lot of people in the biofuel space. Eco's been great to be able to work with. The process here, everyone, is we are basically at the end of the year, the farmer will have a attestation letter to sign, essentially. It'll be a digital signage, just like when you sign for federal crop insurance. This attestation letter will say something to the extent of, I'm Jess, I farm in South Dakota, I want to get third party verified, and I want Continuum Ag to share my data with the third party verifier. So because in topsoil the farmer owns their own data, right? The farmer owns their own data, so they've got to give permission for that data to be shared. That's a big piece of why we started our own software, right? As farmers, my family farm, Jess's farm, our data is super valuable. So we got to make sure that we protect it. So at the end of the year, farmer signs that the release saying, yep, I want to get verified. I attest that the data that I've put into topsoil is legit, right? The only At the end of the day, the liability goes to the farmer, just like in federal crop insurance, just like in other federal programs. We only know what the farmer has put into the system, right? So the farmer says, yep, this is legit. Here's my stuff. And they say, I'll comply with an audit if I happen to randomly get chosen for an audit. We want to make sure that that is as simple as possible. That's why we're collecting all the data now, like Jess mentioned before. But that data gets sent to the third party verifier. And essentially, what we're submitting is, my name is Jess. I've got 15 different fields. Here is the grower farm field info and the parcel IDs and shape files and stuff like that for each of the fields. Here's the number of bushels that came off that field. And here's the CI score of those bushels. And Eco says, okay, cool. And here is the here's the data to back up that score and to prove that that yield was legit. And essentially, at the end of the day, now each farmer has a allotment of bushels that have a verified CI score attached to them. Most of the time, it's going to be a weighted average of each field's CI score as those bushels get aggregated together, but we get it verified on the individual field level to give flexibility that you can either sell straight from that field to town, or you can blend multiple fields together as a weighted average. But at the end of the day, submitting the data to the verifier field by field through topsoil, we make it really easy. And then you'll have an allotment of verified bushels. This is how we can avoid fraud. That Farmer Jess has 300,000 bushels with a verified score. If she ends up selling 500,000 bushels with that same score, that ain't gonna work, right? She verified a set allotment of bushels because we submitted to the verifier. Here's how many fields, and here's the bushels that come off that field and the CI of each one. So hopefully that makes some sense. But really what it boils down to here is that we've got to get that whole process documented. Is there a certain standard for verification? We're working through that with them right now, right? So keeping to those, basically they fall under different ISO standards and stuff like that, right? Just overall rigor process. They'll do some audits, they'll do some on-farm visits, things like that. But at this point, we're the first ones that are going through that process of getting a field level CI score verified. I don't know if anybody else is working on it. I would love to chat with folks who are. We're trying to do this proactively, right? And the reason for this being is we want the farmer to be able to actually get a premium, or at least part of the premium, upon delivery of the grain. If they are just submitting a little bit of data and it hasn't gone through verification at that point of delivery of the grain, the buyer doesn't know if that data is legit or not, and if that score is legit or not, and therefore they're not going to be able to pay a premium, or at least as much of the premium. So we want to be proactive, get people verified, and make sure that the cash flow happens earlier. Also, it's more certainty for the buyer. They actually know what they're buying is legit, and they can actually pay market value for it. Sound right, Jess?
Yeah, it does. So we have some other questions. Can you use a CI score and still be in other carbon programs?
Yeah, this keeps coming up a lot. And at this point, the answer is no. You can't be in a carbon credit program, a carbon inset program, and be in a CI program where you're earning a premium on your carbon intensity, because it's the same practices and it's the same carbon outcome. If you can be in a pay for practice program, right? Like a cost share program that pays you to plant cover crop, or some of the climate smart commodity grants are pay for practice or pay for agronomic support, not necessarily pay for outcome and trying to claim an outcome. So you can be in both of those, right? Pay for practice and a carbon intensity score, but you can't be in a pay for outcome or a carbon program and try to get paid for your carbon intensity score. It scares the crap out of me, Jess, that there's so many programs out there, so many different ways, so many different companies. I want you to sign on the dotted line. And what I love about this is you don't got to sign nothing. All we're doing is documenting the farm data where the farmer owns their score, the farmer owns their info. Yeah, we charge up front to get you an agronomist and help you to document all this stuff, but and to tag team with your current local agronomist. But at the end of the day, you've got flexibility to utilize that data how you want to use it. If you want to deliver it to one of our preferred partners, one of the ethanol companies we're working with, great. If you're not going to participate in CI, say it doesn't happen the way that we want it to, or say that it doesn't happen in time, or say not all your grain goes to the ethanol plant, totally fine. There's other programs out there, and you can choose to enroll in one of those programs at a later time. But what I love about CI, no contracts. You own your data. We're just helping you document it. We're going to dig into that a lot more on the 1 o'clock webinar here later today with Matt Relic from ARVA. He has really been around the block, seeing these different programs, seeing sustainability initiatives come into fruition. So we're going to really dig into all those different opportunities today at 1 o'clock. The link is in the chat.
Yeah. I think the best part about it for like as a farmer's perspective is that you don't have to change anything if you don't want to. Like the highest CI score I've seen is like a 25. That's still way well in the money. And
Yeah.
so you don't have to change your practices if you don't want to. It doesn't matter what you did last year. It doesn't matter what you're planning on doing next year. It's what you're doing in this current 2024 year that will affect your CI premium at the ethanol plant in
Yeah, so
2025.
no like additionality and stuff, right? So we get that question all the time. I'm sure you're getting it all the time too. Of like, okay, how long am I in this thing for? And what do I have to change? And what's the baseline? No, this is just what went into your 2024 crop. And yeah, if you're doing fairly conventional practices, but getting good yields and not overly aggressive of applying stuff, yeah, you probably got to score around like 25. Our average farmer that we've scored today has a score about 9.9. My farm I've shared and been open with was negative 4.1 last year. We've seen some of our farmers all the way down to the negative 20s. In certain counties in the country, the GREET model can get you some super, super low scores. And all it is we just got to document what the score is. But we've got to have our T's crossed and I's dotted. If we're going to make claims like that of having a score of negative 4.1, we got to be able to back it up. right? We're talking a lot of money here. We've got to make sure that the data is really dialed in.
Yeah, absolutely. This kind of goes to your Washington focus group. Is there anything other than 45Z IRA type tax credits that are promoting CI scores? Is there
Mm.
anything being addressed about the Farm Bill?
So I know Farm Bill is just continuing to kind of linger, right? I don't know what's going on. I saw there was something about Tom Vilsack kind of frustrated, Secretary Tom Vilsack frustrated about what's going on with Farm Bill. I haven't heard a whole lot coming out of it. And in my mind, it is, basically like, hey, keep the Farm Bill going the way that it works. Let's get 45Z done. I think that's going to be huge when it comes to implementation of conservation ag systems and being able to really encourage farmers to um, go more on the soil health route, right? Being able to lower your CI score. A big driver of lowering that CI score is plant to cover crop, reduce tillage, adequate, manage your fertilizer smarter, split applications, managing the rates to be able to get good yield outcomes. So it's all these same kind of conservation efforts that Farm Bill Title II really promotes, but now it's just through an outcome-based program rather than a pay-for-practice program. But other CI stuff, I don't know, Jess. Just like 40B, 45, so 40B for SAF, 45 Z for the transportation biofuels. I don't know of other tax credit programs or anything out there. A lot of conversations going on with the livestock folks. There's not tax credits to pay for low carbon beef or low carbon eggs or low carbon milk, right? That doesn't exist. What I'm seeing emerge though is free market programs and free market initiatives where you can still document your farm practices and you work internal to your supply chain to make outcomes and make claims. It's more of a inset approach, um, or a scope 3 reduction approach. That data is still going to be valuable whether you are selling into a biofuel supply chain or a non-biofuel supply chain. And at the end of the day, it's still going to take data. The problem is in biofuels, there's tax credits to pay for it today, and non-biofuels, there's not tax credits to pay for it and to get the flywheel to start spinning. But we need some low carbon goats, right, Jess? Goats, sheep,
Yeah,
cattle.
yeah,
You cattle folks need some tools. The problem is also that the in the biofuel space, we're using the GREET model, right, which is designed specifically for biofuels and developed by the U.S. Department of Energy for these non-biofuel markets. We got to figure out the business model. We got to figure out what's the scoring mechanism going to be.
yeah. I do think there might be a change in landscape based on consumer demand and these other markets that aren't biofuel in the future.
Hmm.
Um, I'm wanting to
Any
learn more.
last questions, Ann?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm
Hmm.
wanting to learn more about CI scoring, soil health, sustainability, and how I can help Kansas farmers and ranchers.
Awesome. Bunch of different events and stuff going on. Definitely be sure to check out some of our events. Got a bunch of stuff on our YouTube page. And what a lot of you guys on here have been following us for a long time, right? At our root, we've always been a soil health company, soil health data, helping farmers to actually implement these practices. For the last, especially the last year, we've shifted our focus to CI, right? Focused on what is the outcome and how do we really drive dollars. But moving the needle in reducing your CI score means successfully implementing the principles of soil health, right? Reducing disturbance, optimizing your chemical inputs or reducing those chemical inputs, keep a living root out there with cover crops, maybe integrate livestock if we can get manure out there or get the actual livestock directed on the field to get the manure placed out there, get more diversity into the system to get more diverse microbial systems going and be able to reduce our synthetic fertilizer. It all boils down to improving soil health. We still do some of that agronomic consulting. It's an upsell in our business model, but we do have agronomists on staff who can tag team with that local agronomist and help you work with your farmers in a more hands-on approach. CI certification is very much just software, right? It's just software, it's just data. But in our Regen Roadmap consulting program, we get more hands-on. We still do the Haney soil health test as well. And we have our gal Sophia runs that. We've basically spun off the Haney testing as its own department here at Continuum Ag, where it's its own thing and doing its own business as a side program to the core software initiatives around carbon intensity. But yeah, a lot of material on our YouTube page though too to keep educating folks. A lot of different events out there. And in Kansas, I really like what's going on at No Till on the Plains and with the Kansas Soil Health Alliance. Tons of great resources out there. Real quick here too, our buddy Keith in the chat saying USDA 100th Annual Ag Outlook Forum, February 15th and 16th, virtual as well. So should be some pretty good, yeah, farm bill updates stuff there. Appreciate that, Keith. Lots to still get fleshed out with the farm bill, so we'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, that Ag Outlook Forum would be a good spot for it. What else we got, Jess? Maybe one more that have
Yeah,
come
there's
in.
one.
If any last minute questions, put them in the chat for sure.
Yeah, we have one more from our HubSpot form. Is there any organic grain buyers that might be paying a premium for low CI grain?
I don't know any organic grain buyers that are paying a premium for based on CI, but we need to start asking them, right? So basically, the push here, everyone, is we need to start pushing on these non-biofuel verticals to say, hey, the biofuel space is got these tax credits that are going to be pushing big dollars into reduced carbon intensity farming. What are we going to do, right? What are we going to do about our low CI grain going to pigs or going to those beef cattle or going into other processing, right? Been talking with guys with white corn and with corn that's going into like food grade alcohol and stuff like that at at processing facilities, or just so many products, right, that can be made with our ag commodities, and most of them aren't going to be subject to this tax credit. So they need to figure out how to compete, and can they take a play out of that playbook and copy and paste it for their market programs and for their initiatives. So I think it's a lot easier to go and have that conversation when you actually have some numbers, right? Jess and our team can help you at topsoil.ag to get your CI score and be able to start the conversation with your grain buyer to say, hey, here's this thing going on in the biofuel space. I ran my number not because of the biofuel space, but because I just wanted to kind of know where I'm at. And here's the type of data that I'm seeing coming off of my own farm. We should leverage this and try to use it. But Jess, what do you think? I mean, I'm sure it comes up a lot in some of those conversations. We're obviously having conversations with farmers all over the country and even a lot of other countries too. But have you heard of any other efforts going on along those lines?
No, but I always say, like, know your CI score so you have a chance at these opportunities as they arise. So you're the first one in line, you know your information, you're ready to step up if there is that opportunity that arises in these different markets, because there definitely could be a change in not only consumer demands, but maybe other tax credits in the future.
Yeah, and it's all going to boil down to data, right? So that's why we're so bullish on this long term. Is it's the concept we have long term. I'm just completely sold on this concept that we're going to have to long term document our farming practices. That's going to be put through different environmental equations, right? Today we're talking carbon, but it's going to be water quality and biodiversity and other outcomes. That outcome's going to have to be verified, and then the outcome goes and the data goes with our product as it goes through the supply chain. That it's that data connectivity and that supply chain transparency that's going to continue to resonate as companies try to figure out how do they make sustainability claims. Last thing I'll leave you guys with, I spoke at the Farm Journal Trust in Food conference last week down in Kansas City. I spoke at this event 2 years ago. I was their closing keynote, and I gave a 100 slide presentation, like all pictures, about my family's sustainability journey, right? Being seventh generation farmer, had some really cool old pictures, of like back in the 70s, plowing the fields and stuff like that. And now progressing to my dad and family getting involved in no-till back in the 80s and throughout the 90s, where they were winning soybean yield contests and stuff like that, and then showing how we've progressed today with relay cropping and diverse inputs and biologicals and all this stuff. And I showed the audience this progression and my message was about farmer innovation. And I left them with, we've been innovating and doing better for generations and for decades. But because of how these carbon programs are set up, family farms like mine can't really participate in your program because it's about additionality and it's about pay for practice, not necessarily pay for the actual bottom line outcome. So that was my message a couple years ago. The other day, I go in there and I say, yeah, I spoke a couple years ago, and now that program where we can actually tell our real story, it's here. The unit of measure is carbon intensity. Here's the 45Z tax credit and how the dollars will flow. And in that room is not biofuel companies. That room is full of sustainability professionals in the food and the rest of the food and ag space. And we're showing them, here's what's going on in biofuels. You guys are going to have to figure out how to compete and how to play within this. That now there's government coming in, kind of setting a precedent on how do we score sustainability and a precedent on the business model and what that data is worth. So non-biofuel companies, you better get going and be paying attention because this is going to be disruptive in the short term, but is a massive opportunity if you can take hold and leverage it. So, I mean, we were pushing all full speed ahead. Jess has been running around all kinds of events and conferences. I did my 12th speaking event of the year yesterday, on and on and on, but pushing and preaching the good word, huh, Jess?
Yeah, exactly.
Any final takeaway for us? We're at time here. Appreciate you hanging out with me here early this morning.
Yeah, I think the best takeaway from today is to get started now, get started early. It's a lot less stress. And we, between my team and Carolyn's team, we really try to have the best customer experience for all of our customers, not only just getting your CI score, but through the whole certification process.
A lot of data, right? So it's kind of confusing. And that's why we want to be pretty hands-on, especially as much as we can at the beginning here to make sure that's a smooth sailing process. So no, I appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out here this morning, Jess. Everyone, see you at 1 o'clock with Matt Rollick from Arva on the webinar. And we will see you again next week on the Chit Chat here as well. Have a great day, everyone.